Thank you, Eric, for that kind introduction. Good morning.
Good morning.
Eric asked you before I came out to think about where you want to go. Did you do that? How did that feel? For some of you, maybe it was incredibly exuberant. My guess is for most of you, it was terrifying to think about it. Oh, no, please don't make me think about the future. Please don't make me think about that because I don't know what that looks like. And what if I fail? And what if I don't? And what if I don't? And what if I don't? No judgment. That's very, very natural. Because our perspective of the future is grounded in our view of our past and our view of our current situation. And so we look ahead based on what we've seen and experienced, and based on what we see and are experiencing. That's the information that we use to look ahead. What if I told you that I could share with you a way to train your brain how to look at the past and how to look at the current in such a way that it fills you with energy and exuberance when you look forward? Would you be interested in that? Awesome. Here's what I'm going to do that you will never hear your teachers say to you, and you'll never hear your boss for the adults say to you. I'm going to ask you to pull out your smartphone. And I'm going to ask you to open up a window where you can take a few notes, because there are 4 or 5 things I'm going to say to you that I'm going to ask you to type them. So for all the teachers in the audience, I know you're jealous because you can't tell your students to pull out their smartphones. You're telling them to put them away. So there is definitely a formula to success. And there's some things that are absolutely vital to experience success at every stage of your life. But I will argue today that the most important is perspective. Now, I know, you're thinking, well, what about education? And training and knowledge? Absolutely, that's important. In fact, I'm an incredible advocate of education. I have multiple degrees. My wife has multiple degrees. I have 2 children with multiple degrees. I have a 3rd child that's working on a bachelor's degree. And I have a 4th child who is toggling between the Air Force Academy, a veterinarian, or an entrepreneur that makes Doc's homemade doggy treats. Wherever he ends up is fine. But what will happen for sure is he will have some post-secondary education. I am an advocate of education. But it is not education alone. Well, you would think, well, it's my family and how I'm brought up. Yes, that's important. It's important to have a strong family. It's important to have a structure around you. It's important to have help and support. But that alone doesn't determine your trajectory. But what about my environment? What about the people I'm around and my friends? Absolutely, that's important. In fact, the people closest to us are a real reflection of who we are. Our friends are a reflection of who we are. But that alone is not enough. Perspective is how we look at things. And not just how we look at it, but how we feel about how we look at it. The law of belief is a universal law that says this: whatever you subconsciously believe and feel, your thoughts, will become your reality. Whatever you subconsciously believe long enough will become your reality. Now, I get it. Some of you are arguing with me, James, that's just not possible. It's just not possible. It can't just be what I think and feel long enough becomes my reality. I know we struggle with the law of belief. I'm going to demonstrate another law. I'm going to ask you, I know I'm in a room full of really bright people. I'm going to ask you to demonstrate this law for me. Or excuse me, I'm going to demonstrate it. You tell me what it is. Note a shiny penny. What law was that? Excellent. Would anybody argue that that law is an actual law? Is there any chance if I walk off the edge of the stage that I won't fall? Any chance? It is a law. And just as the law of gravity is irrefutable, so is the law of belief. What we think and feel over time becomes our reality. So how we look at things that happen to us, how we view our lives, how we view our experiences shapes our next experience. How I think about the experiences in my life shapes the outcomes in my life. That's a powerful, powerful thing. And it is as much a law as the law of gravity. My life has been an absolute dream. A few months ago, I finished my first book. The book is called Keep Calm and Grow Rich, A Guide to Choosing Your Destiny. A dream come true. Thought about writing a book for years and years and years, and I did it. Prior to that, I lived out a dream of starting my own business. The company's called Dash Masters. I wanted to be an entrepreneur for years, and I was finally able to realize that dream. Quick question for you. Tell me, what do you see up there? Some of you will say, I see a face of a person. Others of you see a field, a grassy knoll, a building. Here's what I will assure you. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. My life has been a dream, an absolute dream. Before the business, I had a great corporate career. Climbed the ladder, had opportunity to lead people, made great money, traveled, saw different places. Before that, I saw the first of my 4 lovely children born. Before that, I married the girl of my dreams, and in fact, Tuesday we will have been married 25 years. Whoa! Before that, I graduated as an undergrad, and before that, I went to college to play football. A lot of boys want to do that. Before that, I was a pretty good high school athlete, and before that, I was a normal kid running and playing in the neighborhood and in the streets. And before that, I don't remember. I don't remember my dreams before that, but I imagine my mother's dreams came true when I outgrew asthma. Asthma that was pretty tough. And I'm sure my parents' dreams were realized when I successfully came through some very critical surgeries as a baby. My life has been an absolute dream. Tell me, what do you see? Some of you will say, well, there's an older gentleman in a sombrero. Others of you will see a young lady with her shoulder to us and looking down. I will assure you they're both there. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Did I say my life has been a dream? Let me correct that. My life has been a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. When I was probably around 4 months old, I don't remember this, but I became very, very sick. I was diagnosed with what's called hydrocephalus. That means water on the brain. It was so serious that I went into a coma. My father tells me a story that I died in his arms. He's sure of it because of the way the breath came back to me. He's sure I was deceased. Very, very serious. The doctors told my parents, he's not going to see again. When I did emerge from the coma, he's never going to see. And if he does see, there's been so much damage to his brain because of the pressure, he's going to be a vegetable. He will not be able to take care of himself. My life has been a nightmare. After that, I had struggled with asthma for years and years and years, and the technology in the 70s is different than now. There are things now you can just breathe through while you're watching videos or playing PlayStation. Not then. You had to be in a tent. Now, it sounds like I'm 107 years old. I'm not. But I had to be in a hospital for days and weeks at a time in a tent. My life's been a nightmare. After that, I grew up in a home with an abusive stepfather who mentally, emotionally, physically abused me, my sister, and my mother. After that, as a very, very confused teenager, made a lot of mistakes and was kind of goofy, kind of odd, kind of a loner in high school. I played sports, but kind of alone. My life has been a nightmare. Tell me, what do you see? Some of you will see an old man with a head full of white hair and a long white beard. Others of you will see a man on a horse and someone laying on the ground beside him. They're both there, but here's what I will tell you. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. My life has been a nightmare. When I finally did, through all of that, make it to college on a football scholarship, The first month I was in school, I got a call. My mother had been shot. My mother had been shot. A nightmare. After that, because I just kind of lost focus and lost a little hope, I lost my football scholarship. And I went into a pretty difficult depression, drank a lot, made a lot of poor decisions for a 19, 20-year-old. My life was a nightmare. I finally got myself out of college and got married. That was a nightmare. I'm kidding. My wife's looking at me. Absolutely. But anyone who's been married in this room, you know there's ups and downs and ebbs and flows and ins and outs. It's hard. But if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Tell me, what do you see? Some of you will say you see a rabbit. Others of you say you see a duckling. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I will tell you that my life has been a nightmare. After I married my dream girl, our second pregnancy, not the second child, but our second pregnancy, that baby was lost through a miscarriage. Can't explain the pain of that. My life has been a nightmare. I had several odd jobs, even with the degree. At one point, I was a garbage man, literally on the back of the garbage truck, because I couldn't really find a good job. It was tough, but I had a child, I had a wife, I had a family to take care of. And there was a series of odd jobs and difficulty after that. Just couldn't seem to get on my feet financially. My life has been a nightmare. And as a result of that, I had cars repossessed. And our very first home, before my father bought a home, before my mother bought a home, my wife and I were the first. We bought a home, and that home was foreclosed because just didn't have the money to maintain it. My life has been a nightmare. That corporate career I talked to you about, I had so much drama. So many things went terrible. I was passed over for so many promotions. So many times there were lies told on me. So many times there was confusion and not knowing it today if I was going to have that job. My life has been a nightmare. And then finally in 2014, via text message, I was laid off. And that book I told you about, it's very, very hard to write that, I'm telling you. And writing was the easy part. It's taken me 6 months to get it published because my life has been a nightmare. Now, here's the point. I just told you two stories that are actually the same story. And as it turns out, those stories run parallel. Those stories run parallel. It's the same person, the same experience, the same time, but this guy gets to choose from which perspective he draws his energy. See, here's the thing about perspective. It allows you to choose which to cultivate. If I cultivate the pain, if I cultivate the dejection and the rejection, if I cultivate the hard feelings, if I cultivate all of those terrible things, that's what will grow and that's what will define my perspective. And that perspective is what I look at my past. That's the perspective I'll have of my future. And that's the perspective, unfortunately, I'll have of my present and then of my future. If I cultivate the dream, and I'm able to see all of the wonderful things that are happening simultaneously to the nightmare, then that's the perspective I'll look on my past with, that's the perspective I'll view my present with, and that's the perspective I'll look into my future with. Tell me what you see. No, really, tell me. What is that? Really, what is it? Half empty, half full, what? Okay, we'll come back to that. You're not enthusiastic enough. So it's an argument. This whole notion of perspective, it's an argument. Because right now, I told you my story, but I'm pretty sure as I share my story, you were thinking your own story. I know you just went forward and backward with your own story, and you thought about the dream, and you thought about the nightmare. You thought about all of it. I know you were feeling it. And now you're even arguing with yourself. Which one is going to win? I want you to repeat after me. What I ask you to repeat, I want you to type. If I think I can, or if I think I can't, I'm right. If I think I can, or if I think I can, I am right. Say that. I hope you wrote that down. See, there is an argument that you're having about these experiences. And whichever argument prevails, that will be the prevailing perspective. If you decide that the pain is so great and the devastation is so much that that's just what I want to argue for. I want to argue that my life sucks. I want to argue that my life is terrible. I want to argue that that wasn't fair that happened to me in the past. And I want to argue that that wasn't right what I've gone through. Or if you want to argue, I made it through what I went through. Or if you want to argue, I'm better because of what I've gone through. Or if you want to argue, I can help other people because of what I know. Whichever one you argue for, you'll win. Write this down. I am beautifully and wonderfully made. Write that for me. I am beautifully. Write or type. So I ask you to pull out your smartphone. I am beautifully and wonderfully made. I am beautifully and wonderfully made. Let me hear you say that.
I am beautifully and wonderfully made.
Thank you. I am beautifully and wonderfully made. So it is a war, and it is a war, and you are in battle between you. It's you versus you. It's the enemy that's going to determine how we view our circumstances, how we view our life, how we see things, and how we move forward with it. Repeat after me. I never lose. Sometimes I win. Sometimes I learn. Write that. I never lose. Sometimes I win. Sometimes I learn. I never lose. Sometimes I learn. Sometimes I win. I never lose. Repeat that again. Excellent. So I am very inspired by this gentleman on the next slide. Nelson Mandela lived from 1918 to 2013. Almost 100 years. He died at 95 years old. And I imagine if President Mandela were standing here, that's right, president. He became president of South Africa. I imagine if he stood here, he would say that his life was a dream. He would talk about being an incredible athlete as a young man. He would talk about his marriage to his wife for many, many years. He would talk about his child who he parented, who is still very busy, involved activist in the world right now today. He would talk about the dream, but he would not be able to talk about his life without talking about the nightmare. That he spent a third of his life in prison. One stretch was 27 years. 27 years. He had some other little stints in prison, but that longest, 27 years he sat in prison. That, I'm sure, was a nightmare. Would you agree? So powerful about what Nelson Mandela said about that experience. He said that he was never a prisoner. He was never a prisoner in 27 years because he never gave away the right to forgive his captor. That's perspective. He never gave his power away to forgive. And as long as he could be forgiving, he was a free man. As long as he could be forgiving, he was free. Therefore, yes, President Mandela's life was a dream, but it was also a nightmare. Let me go back to this. I asked you what that was, and some of you said it was a glass half full. In fact, most of you said it was a glass half full, because you were scared to death to say it's half empty. Right? If I say this glass is half empty, I am going to hell. I know it. Right? Because we've been so socialized to you must be positive. You must be positive. You can't be negative. That's a lot more pressure than saying you get to choose your perspective. Here's the truth about that glass. Number one, it's my glass. It's mine. And whether it's half empty, whether it's half full, whether it's running over, whether it's bone dry, it's mine, and I love it. I love all of it. I love everything about it. I love the nightmare. I love the dream. It's my life. It's my glass. I love it. Here's something else that's important. It's at the same time half empty and half full. That's the power of perspective. That it is both. That it is the yin and the yang. That for every action, there's a equal and opposite reaction. That for every positive, there's a negative. For every negative, there's a positive. I had someone say to me before, James, why are you always just focusing on the positive? It doesn't make the negative go away. Why do you just want to focus there? The bad stuff is still there. I said, yes. And why do you just want to focus on the bad? The good stuff is still there. It's all there. It's still there. It's there. So I get to choose where I put my energy. Repeat after me. I see what I believe. Write that down. I see what I believe. Type that in your smartphone. I see what I believe. That's important because we've been socialized to believe seeing is believing. Nah, believing is seeing. When you see it, when you believe it, remember that law of belief. When you believe it and you think about it, when your thoughts, words, and actions align with it, you see it. The way you see it is the way it is. Yesterday we were rehearsing and I got to this point and I did not have a closing. That was okay. And I was tired, so I decided not to come up with one. Here's what I decided to do. I decided that you would close it. I decided that this incredible audience would close this presentation. And so I'm going to ask you, and it's probably not going to be in uniform, but it'll just be an orchestra of amazing voices. I'm going to ask you to read back to me those 4 affirmations. Before you do that, I'm going to challenge you. Those 4 affirmations, that's what those were I just gave you. Those are affirmations. And I'm going to challenge you for 90 days, rewrite that. Put it on your mirror, put it on your dashboard if you drive, put it in your pocket. Because you can reshape how you see things by shaping what you say and what you think. What you say and what you think shapes what you do, and you can reshape that. Don't believe me? Try it. And you may want to add some other affirmations, but just practice with 4. Just practice with 4. While my words have been aimed at baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z, my heart has been aimed directly at Generation Z. Here's why. Because you have the greatest opportunity to learn this young. And if you can learn now to take control of perspective, you can shape your future in an amazing way. Again, all hope is not lost for old guys like me either. But for you, you can truly begin to take charge of your destiny now. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you to, if you would, please stand. And then I'm going to ask from your notes or from your smartphone, wherever you record it, I'm going to ask you to read those affirmations. What was the first one?
If I think I can or I think I can, I am right.
What was the second one?
I am beautifully and wonderfully made.
What was the third one?
I never lose. Sometimes I win, sometimes I learn.
What was the fourth one?
I see what I believe.
You all blow me away. Thank you.